We will begin with the candidates' opening remarks. Cards were drawn. Mr. Amodei, you are second. Danny Tarkanian, you are first on the introduction.
Thank you. I am not running for Congress because I don't like Mark Amodei. I just don't agree with his votes. This district is a conservative district and should demand a representative who will vote their principles. Decide for yourself if you agree with Mark's votes. Mark has continually voted to provide benefits and citizenship to illegal immigrants, to provide taxpayer money to Planned Parenthood, for every final budget, including the last $1.5 trillion, which has caused skyrocketing and painful inflation. This past bill infringed upon our Second Amendments so badly that the Gun Owners of America called Mark a traitor and provided for $500 million to build a wall in the Middle East, but no money to build a wall here in the United States. Mark was the first GOP congressman to join the Democrats and support President Trump's first impeachment inquiry. When our freedoms and liberties were being denied through COVID vaccine mandates, the forced masking of our children, for CRT to fund the police, and the elimination of all safeguards in our elections, Mark remained silent. I will shout from the rooftops and fight relentlessly for you. I will be the voice you haven't had in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Mr. Amodei.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for your public service to this valley and to the state throughout your career so far. So who does agree with the votes of Mark Amodei? Since that's the only reason that we're standing up here in this pitched battle, I'm going to say a couple of things to kind of set the tone for what you're going to hear from me. Pay close attention to who does agree. Pay close attention to veterans groups that have endorsed those votes, which did not break faith with them. Pay close attention to the Right to Life groups that have endorsed those votes that did not break faith with those issues. Pay close attention to Second Amendment ratings from outfits like the NRA, and please research that to see who has lifetime ratings of A, and then whatever else your research might tell you. And also, when it talks about spending and stuff like that, it's like, quite frankly, on the wheels of COVID, and in a bill that had all sorts of Republican values in it, like the Hyde Amendment for right to life and stuff like that, who had the courage to stand up and be honest with you, the voters? Yeah, I'm going to support this, because guess what? Fuels management, fire suppression, and control are important, among other things. Red card, full stop.
With that being said, we'll go on to the question rounds. Remember, you'll be each given a certain time frame, and if a rebuttal is requested, we will go to there. You are both office holders, each in your own capacity. County Commission, whether you're Assembly, State Senator, Congressman, you're both office holders. In that respect, what do you think the most significant piece of legislation that you've passed is? With that, Mr. Tarkanian went first, so Mr. Amodei goes first at this point in time.
Well, quite frankly, you pick it on an issue. We were very proud of the fact that we were able to save over 50,000 jobs in Nevada as a result of the first COVID bill, where somebody in the Department of Treasury decided that licensed gambling people in Nevada were not entitled to share in paycheck protection. So whether that's your casinos here, in Carson, in Reno, throughout the state, it was like, no, you guys can't participate in stuff that other small businesses do. It was during a Republican administration. I was the only Republican in the delegation. And so it was one of those things where you sit there and you go, hey, if I can't deliver during the Trump administration, people in forums like this are going to say, what good does this do us to have you back there? We were phenomenally pleased that we were able to get that change, and that all businesses in Nevada, gaming and otherwise, were able to participate in the Paycheck Protection Program, which impacted people's jobs and businesses staying open during COVID.
Thank you. We'll move on to Mr. Tarkanian.
Well, that would be the passing of the vacation home rental ordinance. You know, when I ran for office, I got a lot of support from the realtors group. They had maxed out to me. I had a lot of support from Steve Teixeira back there and the two different chambers. But when I was, first major issue that came before us was the vacation home rentals. And I didn't believe that that was in the best interest of the people who live up there, to have people rent out their homes, throw big parties, do drugs, leave a bunch of trash, and disrupt the home the quiet and enjoyment of those people's homes. So I led the movement to try to restrict the vacation home rentals. I did this going against people that had supported me in my election. Mr. Teixeira back there will tell you he gave me an earful when he called me after I voted that way. The realtors weren't happy with me. But if you're going to be in public office, you need to go in there and do what's right for the people. Even if it goes against the people that supported you, you do what's in the best interest of the people you represent. And that's what I did, and I'm very proud of it.
Okay. With that, I'll move on to the second question. The National Rifle Association, the NRA, always puts out published grades on individuals. I know I've been graded for over 16 years. And I'll be honest, first time I got graded, I only got a B+. My opponent in that particular primary, former Commissioner Barbara Smallwood, was a NRA lifetime member, so she got an A+. So I got the B. From that point on, I got A's. So scores change over time. So I'm curious, what is your highest and lowest grade given by the NRA? And just for information, I have all the answers in front of me.
Well, you probably will know better than I because it goes back a few years. But I got a very low grade. I think it was a D when I was running for Secretary of State because one of my volunteers in the campaign had reached out to a gun control group without my permission. I resolved that stuff and we got a B+ the next time. I don't know what, I think the B+ was in 2016. But you know, you talk about gun association groups. The NRA is only one of them. And as you know that, Jim, and you know that, you know that there's a lot of different feelings for them. As I mentioned, the last bill that Congressman Amodei just voted for, the $1.5 trillion bill, the Gun Owners of America called him and the other 38 congressmen traitors for passing that bill. So there's different variations of who you want to believe. I believe the Gun Owners of Association have a better feel for this than the NRA did.
Congressman Amodei.
Thank you. My lowest NRA lifetime rating is an A, and that goes back to my time in the legislature. An A the same year in 2006 that my opponent was rated, whatever the number you find, it was not an A. I also want to talk a little bit about that Gun Owners of America thing because they didn't read Nevada Revised Statutes, which already has that red flag provision in it, compliments of the Democratic-led Nevada legislature about 12 years ago. So when they say, oh my God, you're a traitor, it's like, no disrespect, folks, because guess who's going to be at the gun show this weekend and guess who's not going to be? Just a prediction. And guess who's been to a lot of gun shows and owns a lot of guns and has a CCW, and you don't earn those A's because somebody flipped a coin. So I'll just say this. When you look at what was going on in that whole 1,500-page bill, it's like saying yes to things like there's no handgun registry at the UN level, which is a big thing for all gun owners, and with a lifetime rating from the NRA, I think that tells you where I'm at on the Second Amendment.
I'd like to respond.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Amodei, I think probably because of his different poor positions on gun control, has mistaken what was in that last bill. It had nothing to do with the red flag. It had to do with being able, investigating people who were wrongly put on the no gun list because of some mistake that was on the computer. It had nothing to do with the red flag. But he has voted for the red flag bill too.
Appreciate that. Just for everybody's information, I did look up this particular question and get all the answers in that respect. Congressman Amodei, from your assembly to your Senate days and so forth, you are an A at the NRA. Mr. Tarkanian did receive an F, however, it was corrected after it was found out that, you know, they said there was a disagreement with Bloomberg, that you'd got their support and didn't want their support. It was corrected to nothing after that. No endorsement. They endorsed your Democrat opponent instead.
Ross Miller?
That is the information that is out there, public record. So that is how it is.
You know,
With that, we'll move on.
I think that's what I
There's no
said,
reason to
James.
debate me. I'm just giving the facts and the truth that is out there that people can go research.
I said that's right, James.
So
You want to
with
debate?
that, we're going to move on to the next question. We have, what are your views as the government's obligation, if any, to help American workers secure health insurance? Is this only an employer-dependent system? Do you support the creation and continuation of a program such as Medicare for All or Obamacare? Do you have different ideas? If you support a government-related insurance plan, and how would you pay for it? All that in a minute. Yeah, good luck with that. But questions from the audience, so that works. Reverse order in that respect.
Well, in view of a minute, I can tell you this. Absolutely no one payer, no Medicare for all. Also, when we talk about voting records, which is a fair thing to judge you by, especially when you've got a lot of them, I was one of the key votes in getting the Trump medical care plan out of the House of Representatives. I think it was 2017, something like that. It later went down. Remember the famous moment in the Senate where John McCain went, Otherwise, we'd have had health care reform, and it was not single payer. And so quite frankly, especially in this employment market, when you talk about how do we get employees, how do we recruit them, what do we do with all that? Private provided health care is one of the pieces that makes the private sector a phenomenally great place to attract employees and to also work. So never should we have single payer, whether it's Medicare for all, which is a euphemism, or just single payer. Absolutely not. Voted against it every time I had the chance.
James, let me give you some solutions instead of just what you wouldn't do. The problem with our healthcare system, it's one of the few, if only, private systems that there is no competition. You don't know what the price is when you go in and pay for it. You don't care what it is because your insurance is paying for it. We need to create more competition. You can do that in a number of ways. Health savings accounts. You allow people to have health savings accounts. They can then decide what health care they want. And what President Trump did was he was going to require the healthcare providers to state what their prices were before you went in. The second thing is, which Congressman Amodei hasn't addressed, which is the hardest issue, but I'll address it for you, and that's what you do with people with pre-existing conditions. You know, my son had a stroke when he was 5.5. He has a pre-existing condition and would never qualify normally. But you can, but the solution would be to have a national extreme at-risk program where you put in a lot of money, where people go in and take that have the pre-existing conditions and use that to get affordable health care. It's not fair to deny anybody with a pre-existing condition health care, but at the same time, that should be spread between everybody. Competition and pre-existing conditions.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to the next question. Mr. Commissioner Tarkanian, you're up now. What are your highest priority for Nevada and the nation? What are your highest priorities for Nevada and the nation?
We need to rein in what's going on at the border and to stop this illegal immigration. It's gotten out of control. Last year, 2 million people came across the borders illegally. This next month, they're projecting 1,000 per week. This is crazy. Now, Mark Amodei has voted to provide citizenship and benefits to illegal immigrants. All that does is encourage more people to come across the border and try to achieve those results. The only way you're going to stop that is if you don't reward people coming across the country illegally. And in fact, you know that in 2014, La Raza, the Hispanic activist organization, thanked Mark Amodei and 10 other GOP congressmen for voting against a bill that would have stopped Obama's DACA program. He voted against it. La Raza thanked him for it. You know Connie Coons and Sophie Renken? Those are 2 women who lived right here in Douglas County and were killed by an illegal immigrant. He also killed a husband and a wife in Reno. This insanity of helping illegals to rights and services that Americans don't get has got to stop. And it stops when we stop sending Mark Amodei to Washington to represent you.
With that, we'll move on to Congressman Amodei.
Thank you. You know, that's interesting that you opened up with, I'm for solutions, even if it may not be the popular thing to do. The reason that I voted against that was because, you know, we're Republicans. We're about private information. I didn't agree with the establishment of the DACA program. But you know what? Barack Obama did it, and it was the law. So now when there was the bill that said, thank you for signing up, we're going to go mine your information that you signed up, which was the law at that point in time, it's like, yeah, that just doesn't pass the fairness test. We stopped it, but for those of you that signed up and played by the rules at the time, I think you have to be fair. But now also you need to know this. I didn't vote to give anybody citizenship. That's a fabrication. But what the reality is that quite frankly, when you go after something where you want to change it, we can't suffer through any more executive orders with each changing administration, which is why Congress needs to do its job. It's in the Constitution. Merit-based stuff, like President Trump said, is okay, but you got to have the guts to go start the conversation.
Okay.
I got a rebuttal?
Now, we're going to go on to the next one because we're running short on time. I need to try to get one more question in. Reverse order, identify 3 national security threats to the United States. Choose one and explain your approach to dealing with that threat.
Yeah, I need to address the DACA issue. Mark Amodei is on the audio tape that is being played that says he supports DACA. He has voted to keep DACA in place in 2014 when he voted to keep it funded. So that just isn't true. The biggest national security issue we have out there is with China, and it's with China for a number of reasons. One, not only the monetary and the economy situation, we become so reliant upon China goods that and they have so much of our debt that they can destroy us at any time. Second of all, they're spending billions and billions more dollars on their military and we're not. So we've been susceptible to China both economically and militarily, and we need to focus on that area.
Congressman Amodei.
Well, number one priority covers a lot of things, and that's energy. Quite frankly, it's the biggest threat to your paychecks, it's the biggest threat to your budget, it's the biggest threat to our national security. So that covers China, covers Russia, covers everything. Make no mistake, the energy situation wasn't done by a vote of anything. That was done by this administration through executive orders basically declaring war on the energy industry. And until we reverse that, which is going to have to be done through Congress with the power of the purse string, then quite frankly, we're going to continue to be vulnerable, which is why it's going to be a pretty tough 2 years. You need leaders with experience and who know how that process works to get us back where we need to be.
Okay. With that, we're going to proceed to the last audience question. We have time for one more, then we have to do closing remarks. COVID-19 has destroyed jobs. The economy needs to be rebuilt. What policy steps should Congress take beyond just giving out stimulus money and bailouts in the next year to create as many jobs and as much prosperity as possible? Reverse order.
Well, quite frankly, when things were going well, it was when the private sector was empowered, not regulated, not told who was in favor and who's out of favor. So we have to get back to, for instance, in the healthcare industry, the private sector is a good thing to help be one of the pieces of the healthcare industry. We need to basically also maximize the ability of this country to produce its own goods, whether it's energy, whether it's rare earths, whether it's all those things, which is what I've been doing as one of the few Western members who's focused on, look out that window. That's called agriculture. And also up there in the Pinettes, there's mining up there. And so when you've got to play to the strengths and you're one of the few Western voices on that, that needs to be the strongest voice possible. Those will be continuing priorities.
Commissioner Tarkanian.
Well, it's interesting to note that Mark Amodei said his greatest legislation achievement was passing the COVID relief because of the PPP. Well, that's just added and exasperated our national debt, which is causing the inflation it's facing right now. We're all paying for those handouts that were given out by the federal government and higher prices for everything. The way to get the economy back online is the old-fashioned way. You lessen the burdensome restrictions, you streamline businesses to get in and programs to be built, and you go back to being energy independent like President Trump was doing.
Okay. With that,
Just real briefly.
I gave one response to Mr. Tarkanian. I'll give you one
I
response.
appreciate it. You know, that's interesting because the only one I voted for was the first one, and as I recall, you had some questions personally about several provisions in that bill. So that's an interesting answer. Thank you.
With that, that brings us to closing remarks. We have many more questions. A lot of them, just so you know, are gotchas. They're meant at one candidate, not really to necessarily bring out the information. They're kind of gotchas, and I don't think that's right on either behalf. We're trying to get a full balanced opinion of what's going on here. With that, we need to go to the closing remarks so we can move on to the next office holders. Closing remarks, reverse order from the initial draw. Congressman Amodei's first, then Commissioner Tarkanian.
Thank you, and I appreciate it. Thanks to the Business Council for doing this. This is the system at work the way it was meant to be. So I'm just going to say this. Nobody leave this room and say, Amodei said, please vote for me again because you have 6 times in 10 years. In this job, you got to earn your stripes every day. You got to earn them with constituent services. You got to earn them with oversight over government agencies, and you got to earn them with your voting record. And so when we sit there and we say, you know, how Amodei votes, go to that back table back there and see what all the national pro-life groups say who they want to return. See who Veterans in Politics says we want to see this veteran and the father of a veteran return to work our issues. Go see what the Peace Officers Association that represents all peace officers in Nevada, who they want to keep representing them. And hopefully, when you drill down and get those sorts of facts, instead of just, hey, this guy stinks and we need to get rid of him, which quite frankly, I hope you think is inaccurate. When you look at all those groups who are not liking him, liking me, but evaluating objectively my votes, then I hope you say, hey, you know what? We'll keep this guy on duty for all of those reasons and for his deep roots in this community and this state for those reasons. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Commissioner Tarkanian.
It should be noted that Mark never denied making one of those votes that I said he did at the beginning, because he did. In 2013, Mark Amodei voted against the bill to end the federal government shutdown. He stated, during 2 campaigns, I told Nevadans I would give my full attention to such issues as reining in runaway federal spending and debt. Unlike many in this town, I will not test your memories and hope you haven't forgotten. That sounds great, doesn't it? However, since that time, Mark has voted for every single budget increase in our national debt by more than $30 trillion, resulting in painful inflation. In fact, he has voted for $1.4 trillion more in spending than Nancy Pelosi has. On April 17th, Mark's website ended its immigration section stating he supports a path to citizenship for those who brought here illegally through no fault of their own. On April 25th, I brought this to the attention of the Washoe County Central Committee in front of Mark, and they were aghast. Since that time, Mark replaced that language on his website with, Mark believes in border security and protecting the rule of law. Because Mark wants to win so badly, he changed his website to deceive the people. This is what happens to establishment politicians who care more about staying in power than doing what is right for the people. This is only one issue. What else is he deceiving you about? I proudly serve on the county commission. I have taken on the powerful special interest groups and even some in the county to fight for and vote for what is in your best interest. I have been outspoken, maybe even a little aggressive, but I've always been your voice that you could be proud of, and I will do the same in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much.
Thank you both for your time this evening. We hope you'll both stay around and visit with the community after this debate. We're now going to take a short 2-minute break while we set it up and bring up the individuals where Bobby will be moderating. I've been told I needed to put down a little step stool with that, but she was moderating the Dulles County Clerk Treasurer. And we're not kidding.